everyone! So I recently got a couple of comments on a video of mine asking me to talk about which universities I applied for and why I ended up choosing Exeter. So I thought I would film a whole video on that today. I have got a video up on my channel called My University Story, and that kind of talks more about my GCSEs, my A-levels, how I ended up at university, but this is going to focus more on why I chose Exeter in particular. So when I was first looking at universities, I went on one of the ranking lists that lists all of the best universities for your course. Now, I don't recommend basing your entire decision off those lists. They are constantly changing and they're different between different websites, like there's a Guardian list and another list, and they're always different. But for me, it was just a nice place to start. It was less overwhelming than looking at the hundreds of university choices out there. So I think I narrowed it down to maybe the top 20, 30 for my course. And those are the ones I focused on because it just made the whole choosing process a lot easier for an indecisive person like me. At my school, we had one of those days where all of the universities come in and they give out prospectuses and brochures and all that sort of thing. So when I went along to that, I made sure I picked up different leaflets and things for the universities I'd seen on that ranking list, just to give me a better idea of what those universities were about. And they always break down the key details, like if it's a campus uni, what the course is like, all that sort of thing. So I made sure I picked up a lot of those. I mean, I picked up far too many. I did not need as many as I picked up, but I think whenever you go to these sort of things, you get as many free stuff as possible. So I came home with literally a stack of books this high, which wasn't great because it didn't make my decision any easier, but it meant that I had a lot of information on different universities to have a little look through. From there, I kind of narrowed it down to about 5 universities I was interested in. I went on all their websites. I made sure to look at their grade boundaries to see if it was if there was a chance that I could get into those universities, and had a look at the course and the university, and you just kind of get a broad idea of what the university is like. But obviously it's quite difficult to get a feel for university until you've gone there. So I went to 3 open days. I went to Bath, UEA and Exeter. I also live in Kent, so I didn't go to the open day at Kent University, but I had been there quite a few times before just on school trips and things, so I had sort of an idea of what Kent University was about. But for the other 3, I went up with my mum or my dad. They drove me up to the universities and we spent the day there looking around. I would really recommend going to open days if you can. I know it's not always an option for some people if they're really far, if you live in a different country, money, all that sort of thing makes it quite difficult to go to open days sometimes. But if you have the opportunity to go to one, I definitely recommend it because I feel like that's when you get the best feel for the university. So I think the first one I went to was Bath, and Bath was actually my favourite at the time from just reading online and looking at pictures and stuff. I really liked the look of Bath, and I'd been to the city quite a few years before and I knew it was really pretty and it was a really nice city, so I had my heart set on Bath thinking that that was going to be the university I would want to go to. And then I got to the open day and I wasn't a big fan. Also, I want to say that my opinion isn't the opinion. Obviously, universities are going to differ for every single person. Lots of people obviously love Bath. Me not liking the Bath open day doesn't say anything about Bath as a university, obviously, but everyone's just going to have different universities that suit them best, and Bath just wasn't one that suited me. I didn't really like the campus. I can't really remember what in particular stood out to why I didn't like it, but I just remember leaving feeling really disappointed because I had my heart set on it and I thought I was going to love it, and it just wasn't the place I was expecting it to be. I still love the city. I definitely love the city and the area, but I didn't really like the university. Nothing on the course particularly stood out to me. The people didn't really stand out to me, and those are the sort of things you should be looking at the open day. So I wasn't bowled over by Bath, and I kind of just pushed that aside, and I knew that I didn't really want to apply there. With psychology, it's a little bit different to applying to other courses. Well, I don't know how it is to apply for every course, but psychology courses are often approved by the British Psychology Association. I think that's right. And I think the courses that are approved by them are sort of the best ones to go for. I don't really know the ins and outs of it. I just remember when I was at school being told not to really go for the ones that weren't approved by the BPA. I guess it has some sort of something to do with recognition, and if you're going into a job with psychology, I think it's better to have a course that's BPA recognised. So I was making sure I was looking at courses that were BPA recognised and ignoring the ones that weren't. But that does mean that the courses are all quite similar between universities because they have to follow a certain guideline to make sure that they cover everything that makes them BPA approved. which means for me the courses didn't really differ hugely between each university. Now I know for other universities that is a big thing, and you're definitely going to want to have a look at the course. I mean, even if you are looking to do psychology, you still need to look at the course, but they may differ huge amounts between different universities, and there may be a course that really speaks out to you. Maybe it's like they focus on a certain aspect of a subject that you're really interested in, or they might have a really good department that focuses on marine biology and you want to go into that. You know, look at those sorts of aspects of the course. For me, I didn't really look too deeply into the course because I noticed that they were quite similar between each university, so that didn't really bother me that much. The things I did tend to look at on these open days though were the accommodation, the city that the campus was in, and also just like the people and the vibe. So for all three of the places I looked at, Bath, Norwich and Exeter, the cities are all quite similar in a sense. You know, they're quite old, they've got the cathedral, they're kind of my vibe. I really like that type of place. So all the cities I loved, and I would have been happy to live in any of the three cities. My eldest sister went to UEA, so I'd already been to Norwich a couple of times and I really liked it. So the city definitely wasn't like the deciding vote for me because I loved the cities in all three of the universities I looked at. I can't remember whether I went to UEA or Exeter next. But to talk about UEA, like I said, I really liked Norwich, I loved the city, and I didn't really mind the campus, but for me the deciding vote to not really want to go to UEA was the accommodation. And I don't think you should base everything on the accommodation because you're only going to normally be living there for 1 year, and then the other 2 years you'll be living in a house somewhere, so it's not the end of the world if you get an accommodation that you don't like. But the accommodation I would be living in UEA, which is like the cheapest one, the only one I could really get, was just a bit weird. They didn't have ovens, which for me, something that I love doing is cooking, and something I was really excited about for moving out was to be able to cook my own meals, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. So for an accommodation not to have an oven, I was just like, what? And like the kitchen was just very clinical and metal, and I mean they had microwaves, which meant you could cook stuff. Like it was a microwave oven where you could still cook food and not just microwave it, and they always do the line where it's like, oh, we cooked a Christmas dinner in this microwave. But for me, I couldn't see myself living there for a whole year and having to use that kitchen, which obviously shouldn't be the main thing you focus on. It should be like the course, but accommodation for a year is a big part of the university experience for me, and I just didn't feel the vibes from that one at UEA, which then leads me on to Exeter. So I came up to Exeter with a couple of friends who were also going to the open day, and I stayed in the actual student accommodation while I was there. I didn't stay in one that I would be living in. I stayed in Holland Hall if you're from Exeter, which I definitely could not afford, was not what I was looking at, but it was nice to stay actually on the campus in the accommodation. And I looked around the university, and the main thing that really stood out to me was the accommodation, which is quite funny because the one that I really liked and the one that I ended up living in is like the cheapest accommodation that gets really slated by people, and it's kind of like judged majorly if you're in Old Lefrauda, which is what I was in. But I just really liked it. I really got good vibes from it. I could see myself living there. I liked kind of the kitchen space. I liked how many people were in a flat, and I really got good vibes from it. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, my first impression was that it was very prison-like, and I know that is a lot of people's first impression when they go to Old Lefrauda, or I think it's called Standard Lefrauda if you're looking online at Exeter accommodation. But I just really liked it, and I could see myself living there, so that's like the first thing that stood out to me at Exeter. I also just got really good vibes from the campus in general. The one thing that I did notice was it was very hilly, which I thought would be probably quite a struggle if I ended up going there. But I don't know how to describe it. I feel like often you'll go to universities and you'll just get a sense to whether you can see yourself being there, and I definitely did get that when I went and visited Exeter. That being said, if you don't get that sort of sense or vibes or anything like that when you do go to these open days, please don't stress, because I know that before I went to Exeter I was really stressing that I hadn't kind of found the one, and often it's not a case of finding the one, and you go through kind of like a different process than just kind of getting the vibe and feeling like you belong, and you actually like look at the pros and cons of different universities, and that's how you decide. So if you don't go to a university and you don't just feel like this is the one, don't stress, not everyone does, and it's not the end of the world. You will still go to university and hopefully you will still love it. So I really liked the campus at Exeter. I liked how the accommodation was so close to the university. Also, all the universities I was looking at at were campus universities. So that is definitely something to consider if you are looking at universities or applying or doing any of that sort of stuff in the near future. You need to look into whether you want a campus uni or, I don't know what the other term is, a non-campus uni. Basically, a campus uni is when everything is in one place, all your lecture halls, all the accommodation, it's kind of in one area. But other universities kind of have things dotted around where you have to travel in between places. And I knew that I didn't want to do that. So I only looked at campus unis, and I just really liked Exeter's campus. I liked how close the accommodation that I would hopefully be staying in was to the main buildings and the lecture halls, and everything was just very close together. I liked that it had trees and stuff like that, which sounds weird, but for me, going to a university that was really concretey was just really off-putting, because I like pretty things. That's just the kind of thing I like, and it just made me feel better being in a place that also had trees, and it was just nice. I liked the campus. I think the campus kind of suited everything that I was looking for at a university campus. Like I've already mentioned, I wasn't really too fussed on the course at every university open day. I did go to all the sort of like lectures and meet and greet things for them, but I didn't really know what to look for. So I think if I went to them again, I would maybe focus on that a little bit more. But I think it's so hard when you've not gone to university yet to kind of know what you'll want. You don't really know what style of teaching you're like, you don't know kind of the subjects that you'll necessarily like, especially if you're doing a subject that you've never studied before. So I think that can be quite tricky, basing a university on the course itself, if you're someone like me who didn't really know much about the course itself anyway. I also went on a campus tour for all 3 of the open days I went to. I think that's quite a good way to get a sense of the bits that they're proudest of, because it's like the areas that they show you. You can also get a sense for the kind of people that go to the university, because they're often ran by students, so it's a good way to get like feelings and vibes of how you feel about the university. I know that the woman who did the tour at UEA just was quite, I don't know, I'm not going to be mean, but she was very enthusiastic, but in a way that put me off. And I know you shouldn't be put off by an individual person at the university, but it was kind of that on top of everything else that made me not really want to go there necessarily. So I ended up putting Exeter as my first choice, and then my second choice that I put was UEA. But I knew that even if I didn't get into Exeter, I wouldn't really want to go to UEA. I just put it as my second choice because we kind of had to, and I knew that if I didn't get into Exeter, I would probably have taken a year out to retake exams and that sort of thing. I didn't end up applying for Bath. I didn't even get the grades to get into Bath anyway, so that doesn't really matter. But I just knew I definitely didn't want to go there, so I didn't even bother applying. And then the other university I applied and got an offer from was Kent, but again, I knew I didn't really want to go there. I wanted to make sure I moved away from home, and yeah, so that's why I didn't really even look at that as a university option. So that has been the whole video of the universities I applied for and why I ended up choosing Exeter. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I will leave my other university story down below, because that talks more about like my A-levels and how I got into university if you're interested in that side of things. Let me know any other videos you'd like to see from me, and I will see you in my next one.